apoiar a agricultura familiar, ela é muito importante, até mesmo porque a gente vê na internet ou que a gente vê na televisão que a agricultura é só aquelas grandes extensões de monocultura, usam todos aqueles produtos químicos.
Quando a gente pensa em racismo ambiental, a gente precisa analisar as estruturas sociais que formaram a nossa sociedade.
No es un tema es un tema ambiental y es la basura, no. La basura es un tema de personas, es un tema de sociedades.
Si vives en Lima, sabrás que esta es la ciudad más grande del Perú, donde en 1980 se inició un movimiento migratorio masivo. Ahí estaba mi mamá. Así como ella, migrantes de zonas rurales y comunidades indígenas vinieron a Lima y se situaron sobre terrenos vulnerables propensos a desastres naturales como el fenómeno del Niño.
Cities face enormous challenges when it comes to climate risks. And as our urban population grows, so are the risks from climate change.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bem-vindos. Buenas tardes. Boa tarde, todo mundo. I'm very happy to welcome you to the Ecovision Summit 2024. This is an event prepared by LALA, but supported by the Mitsubishi Corporation Foundation for the Americas. So we're super happy to have you all with us. I'm Fernanda Caloi, CEO of LALA Brazil, and I'm thrilled to be your host today, your hostess, actually. And if you speak Portuguese or Spanish, please find this little globe icon to activate the simultaneous translation. Se você fala português e quer escutar, né, o próximo talk com mais detalhes, você pode ir no globinho, clicar e ativar a tradução. Lo mismo, si hablas español, puedes activar la traducción, mi perfecto portuñol, en el little icon, el pequeño globo down there. So now we're ready. We're here after a couple good months of planning, and so excited to have all these amazing people gather here today. Not only our speakers, but you, really you, the audience that we want to talk to, that we want to support in your journey to find more sustainability in your lives. To open this event with me, I'm thrilled to call the founder and CEO of LALA globally, Diego Ontaneda. He will say a few words to us before we go into the speaker's conversation. So Diego, please join me.
Thank you, Fer. Thank you all for being here. This event is a first at LALA, so we'll be looking forward to your feedback, your recommendations to make sure that this is a value additive experience for you all. Huge thanks again to the Mitsubishi Corporation Foundation for the Americas for believing in us and partnering with us to work together from different trenches, from different perspectives, but for a shared goal of promoting sustainability in the region. Particular thanks for Joe Reganato and Rio Tateishi, who are the point people. Rio made the original bridge between the organizations, and Joe stewarded the relationship and believed in us. And at LALA, we believe in the power of individuals to be the change and to lead the change. So that's why I single you two out. It's easy for the organizations to get the headlines, and the individuals behind the scenes that may be the ones driving the change, making things happen, are often never acknowledged. Today you will hear three outstanding leaders. Fernanda will introduce them in more depth, but we wanted to give you all a sense of how people are fighting for sustainability, for climate, for the environment, for a future. And hopefully this will inspire more of you to either consider a career that is all in the fight for sustainability, or to figure out how can you add a sprinkle, how you can be an ally from whatever trench you hold, to fight for our planet and for our future. So thank you all again for being here. Again, please do get back to us on the feedback forms with your recommendations so that we can know what kind of events you'll want in the future. And back to you, Fer. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Diego. And yeah, we're all feeling that this is not just an event, but it's a call to action for us to gather around, everyone that's passionate about this topic, for us to battle together the greatest challenge of our generation, right? We're all feeling it. Climate change is here. And if we don't do even our little piece, how can we expect that we will do even bigger things, right? So your engagement here started even before this event, even before you opened the link today to be here with us. And you told us a little bit about what this represents to you. So more than 100 people collaborating in this word cloud that we have built together. And this shows to us a very important understanding. So if we can bring the word clouds in so this is, what does it mean, the sustainability, the environmental sustainability for you? And you can see there, right in the middle, future, right? So we're here talking about our existence, actually the continuity of our existence. So nothing is more important than that. And all around the word feature there, you can see care, cuidado, right? And so many other words that represents to us also at LALA, what talking about climate change and this difficult path that we need to take together, what it means to us. So climate change is a facet in our lives that we'll have to face. Yeah, so today we're bringing this opportunity to remind ourselves the power of addressing everything that lies within us. So we want to bring this in a collaborative way, and innovation will be the center of the conversations that we'll have today. And we think together we can fight for a more equitable, sustainable, and safe future for all of us. So if you're here today, you also believe in that. To start, and before we move over to the speakers, I think I need to tell you a little bit of what I am doing in my personal trajectory, the decisions that I've made so far that I think brings me closer to the future that I want to see. A few years ago, I decided to move to the countryside. I was born and lived most of my life in São Paulo, very urban. And I decided that I wanted to be closer to nature, also to leave more positive impact in the planet. So when we decided that, together with my family, we started a community with a few other families of friends, and we took all the steps possible to be sustainable in our living. So today we plant part of our food. We have a solar power that we all invested in. We collect the rainwater to use it. We have collective habits, so we all drive each other's kids to the school and back. So all this is bringing us closer to a more sustainable future that we want to see. And sometimes it feels to me that is not enough. And sometimes I feel, is this small little part that I'm doing making a difference? And sometimes I'm not in my best days and I say, this feels awful that I'm doing here something, and I don't know if others are doing the same or if others are doing what they could be doing, right? So I think this is also my call to action here today for all of us. Even the smallest piece of action that we take matters. Because if 8 billion people decide to do something, then suddenly we're closer to a solution. So telling today a little bit of my story is to inspire some of you, but it's also to remind myself that every little piece matters. And that's why I'll continue doing whatever I can, even in my bad days. So yeah, that's why I'm so excited to take you to this journey in the next couple of hours that we have together. And I want to highlight the powerful voices from around the world that we have gathered here today, both speakers and you, because I know all of you are doing something, or you are trying to do something. Imagine what could it be. So let's talk about this a little bit today, and we'll be closer to finding these unique solutions that we all want to build together. So today and in a few weeks to come, we'll have continuity to this event in smaller gatherings. We want to deep dive more into the current climate landscape, understand the challenges, explore pathways that we all could take as individuals to sustainability. And at LALA, we are dedicating time to make that. We're dedicating time to empower you, the change makers. And that's what we'll continue to do with the support of some of our donors, as we already mentioned Mitsubishi, but some others who already care too much about what we're doing related to the sustainability vertical. So come with us in this journey. And we think it's just a first step. Understanding more what we could do is a first step, so we can take action in our communities and be even more vocal about the things that we can do. But I think an important piece to say is we need to start locally, right? And within our La Leaders community, we feel there's this power of everyone learning from each other, but we can act in our local communities, in our families, in our cities, and we don't need to be thinking, oh, I need to start too big. You can start at your own community, right? And the example is so powerful. And being here with you, I think, reminds me about what we can do if we are all together. Yeah, so are you ready? You will be inspired today by some experiences. And yes, we have 3 keynote speakers today. The first of them will be Brody Boland. He's a sustainability expert working with McKinsey today, but he has much more to tell us about his journey. And then after that, you will be able to choose between the Portuguese or the Brazilian keynote with Andrea Rivera, an entrepreneur and activist from Peru, and Amanda Costa, a young social activist from Brazil. So I think we will have a lot of fun and we'll get very inspired today, because I already know these 3 speakers and I am inspired by them. So welcome everyone to this journey. And we hope you interact. Please drop your questions on the chat. We'll have a team to bring these questions to us as we interview the speakers, and let's make this a fun conversation. So thank you all for being here, and let's plant more seeds for the future that we want to see in Latin America and beyond. Now I want to call the vignette so we can start really the event. Hey, Brody, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here, Fernando. I really appreciate it. It's exciting to be with so many folks who are passionate about sustainability. So really excited about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we were excited when you accepted the challenge to be here and inspired this whole new generation of leaders, because they are already doing lots of things and we want to continue this conversation. So we thought that bringing someone that has such a unique experience in the field would be one step that we could take as a community to continue inspiring these young folks here. So yeah, let's dive into a little bit of what you have done. I want to know all your secrets.
They won't be secrets anymore.
Oh yeah. Thank you. So yeah, everyone, Brody's here with us, coming from a long path in working with sustainability. He not just works for McKinsey today in working in all this climate risks, mitigations and preparations that today it's kind of a new job. So we want to know from him how he ended up discovering this path. So I will ask a few questions about that. And I think you will be inspired to think in your own path too, because we know that not all the professions that will exist in 5 years exist today. So imagine if 30 years ago, someone would say to their kids, oh, you just have to be a risk preventer, or, I don't think that was the case, right, Brody?
No.
Yeah, so that's great. But I want to start even before. So we want to know more about your path, because you've done a bunch of things related to sustainability, but really you started working with the youth, right? So I know that one of your first career decisions was to join ISEC, that is a global organization working with the youth. So tell us about that. How did you end up? What is this first steps and decisions that you took in your career like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have always been just like deeply passionate about sustainability topics since I was literally since I was 5 years old, and you know, won some competition about the panda bears that took me to the Calgary Zoo. So, it's always been like a real core part of who I am. ISEC, which is an international student organization that does a lot of exchanges. The thing that drew me to that was I was working with a colleague one summer who told me that she had just gotten back from an exchange to Estonia. And at the time, I was kind of like nodded, like, I totally knew where Estonia was. And then, of course, went away and looked up where exactly is this place called Estonia. And over the subsequent, few years, I ended up going to Estonia several times. And so for me, ISEC was just this amazing opportunity to kind of open up the doors on the world, to experience a bunch of different countries and cultures and people, to learn more about myself in that process. I had crazy experiences. I met with the president of Colombia and, sat on the floor with some former, leaders of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan, and, met youth all around the world. But it was a few years in which I was just like really immersed in all of the things that were happening in the world, and inspired by those things, challenged by those things, helped me learn more about myself and learn more about the world in the process.
When you're speaking, I could picture a bunch of the La leaders saying something similar to what you're bringing, So
Yeah.
I could feel some of the conversations that I had already with people that are here in this room saying, hey, I just want to know where is another country and immerse in another culture and see what these leaders are doing. So looks like you had a start of a career that could be similar to some of the people here today. They're just joining communities and organizations that are connected with other cultures. So you said you were passionate for sustainability since you were a kid. But did you know that this type of work existed, like communities like ISEC throughout the world, just empowering young people to do it? How was for you to discover this word, and like if this didn't happen in your life, do you feel what would have changed if you didn't discover the power of community so early on?
Yeah, I think my world just would have been a lot smaller, and like it totally resonates what you're saying, Fernanda, about I'm sure a lot of the folks who are listening to this, right, are in that process of their world becoming bigger. And like what a beautiful thing, right, to see all the different opportunities that are out there, see people, and bigger, not just in a kind of opportunities, more range of career opportunities to pursue, but also the bigger in the sense of like, I walked into a person's home in a community in Sri Lanka that I never would have gone to before, and saw how they live. And so just bigger in kind of all directions. And to your point, I don't think I would have necessarily realized that there were opportunities to do this kind of work without having that enlargement of my world.
Yeah. Just curious, and this could resonate to the audience too. Do you consider yourself as like a young, expansive, how do you say expansive in English? I forgot, but like very communicative and open and easygoing with everyone, or since the beginning, or did you learn that as you like outgoing? Yeah, someone told me here. Yeah, outgoing. Do you consider yourself like that, or you think opening up for experiences help you also see this other
Oh,
way?
totally. I'm an extreme introvert, so quite the opposite of outgoing, but by my disposition. Um, but like I think many introverts, which are um, also just very curious. I love to listen and learn about things and learn about people and so on. And so yeah, a lot of those experiences helped me be more comfortable in large contexts. I was thrown on stage to do a speech, and I was um, thrown into some different environment where I had to have a conversation with someone who I, wouldn't otherwise have met. And so it just helped me get comfortable with like a much broader set of folks.
Yeah, team, does anyone can relate to that? Tell us, we want to know. Because sometimes you just feel, oh, being a leader, being an entrepreneur, being an activist is not for me because I'm not outgoing, And at LALA, we want to challenge that too. We know that everyone has inside something special and unique to offer. And it's not because you're not trained to do that or not in your natural personality to do that you can't, So that's something that we do at our camps. We train to self-awareness and to talk about the story. So I'm curious to know if people in the audience are relating to your experience, and if they would have questions, please drop them on the chat, team. And while I'm curious to know what young Brody was about, but let's continue on your journey. So after your years at ISAC, I know that you had some academic experiences and you did some research or something. Can you tell us a little bit about that phase?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, right after my undergraduate, I took time off in the middle of my undergraduate degree to do ISEC, had that, explosion in my mind, saw the world, came back, decided, yeah, I should probably graduate from school. So did that. And then I went to McKinsey for a couple of years but did a lot of random stuff, at McKinsey. And so then I went and said, I want to actually like go back into an academic environment. I did a PhD and spent all my time thinking about how do real complex systems make really profound shifts, period. Right now, my focus was all about sustainability. So I looked at a city and said, spent a lot of time, a few years studying a city. It was trying to become more sustainable, and it was trying to get out of the inertia that it had before. Think about how does it change its economy? How does it change its education systems, its political systems to become more sustainable? So that was that kind of complex thing. I looked at technologies. And after that, I think that was just a really, again, in a different way, a really opening experience. At the end of that, I decided I wanted to be in a place where I could have a real impact on those topics. I wanted to be kind of in the world trying to change complex systems. And that's why I kind of came back to McKinsey to do sustainability work.
Amazing. And I want to go to this question that Vanya asked. Until this point, what was the most difficult thing that you found in your journey? I think she was maybe referring to the first phase at ISX. So can you tell a little bit about like the challenges that you that maybe until today you saw them as challenges?
So I mean, there were all kinds of challenges. Actually, I don't know how many people know Oriana, but Oriana Torres, who's a good and old friend, one really experience stands out that Oriana will remember very vividly, which is we were about to run this massive conference. About 500 or 600 people were arriving in India. Oriana and I and the rest of our teammates were running the conference, and about 4 or 5 days before the conference started, we all got incredibly ill. And so there were these moments where there were individual moments of, okay, how do we get through this? How do we overcome? How do we work as a team? We had a list, a little flip chart up in the room of all of our names and who is too sick to do anything, who is sick but can do something, and who is like operational. So there were moments like that were challenges.
Sound to me that this list would be something that Oriana was tracking.
Oriana well then.
A lot of us, yeah.
Exactly. Oriana was probably the toughest among us. She was leading the Latin American region, and she would, she was toughing through it. But But so there were moments like that were challenges, and there were also just a lot of moments that were outside my comfort zone. So I was, as an introvert, like go on stage and speak literally beside the president of Colombia to 1,000 people, right? Or go meet these people you've never met before to try and open a branch in Lebanon, or go and show up in Pakistan and do a television interview. Right. So for me, those were often, I think, personally, the times that I found most challenging. But that's also what expanded my sense of what I could do, right? Because that confronting those fears and all that kind of stuff was expanded my senses. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a cliche, but you get stronger, right? So you
Yeah,
go
totally.
next time you're doing it in a more relaxed way. So it's just a matter of starting, I feel.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you had this moment of research, PhD, and then you decided to go back to McKinsey. But I don't know if everyone knows a lot about McKinsey here, the biggest or one of the biggest consultant firms in the world. So they already had a division or a practice of sustainability that was strong, or it was something that was starting? How it was at the time?
It was earlier stages, I would say then, right? And, McKinsey is a, global consulting firm. We typically do work that is at the kind of top level of the organizations we work with. And yeah, I was just really passionate about sustainability. And there was a little bit of work we did in sustainability, but I wanted to do that all of my time. And so I really invested in doing research in that area and thinking about, what actually needs to happen to transition us to a more sustainable world. I did research on climate risk, what's going to happen to different socioeconomic systems, to our, agricultural systems, to our infrastructure, to our cities because of climate change. And how can we help our clients prepare to deal with all of that? And so I think it was really trying to create some new opportunities. It wasn't like just slotting into an organizational structure, but really thinking about what is the type of impact I want to have, and how do I find a way to create an opportunity to have that kind of impact. And that's been the journey over the last kind of decade now of time. Yeah.
Amazing. What else could you be doing that would be so impactful, right? So it sounds like a good, yeah. So I'm starting to be happy about a lot of questions that are coming in. I will try to bring some of those to the continuity of our chat here. I'll be inspired by Breno, because he's asking about the barriers of collaboration. And I would imagine, just please, I would love for you to explain to us how a player like a consulting firm can help all the actors overcome this barrier to collaborate more effectively. Because you already mentioned to us that you worked with cities. And a city seems like a very complex system, right? So I'm sure you had some key people to start the plan and the conversation. But how typically does that work in practical? So you go there and you start deciding who collaborates with who and doing what. So can you walk us through a little bit of how is your work today?
Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of the work, I'll talk about, for example, there's two big areas of work in climate change. There's mitigation, which is reducing emissions, and there's adaptation, which is dealing with the consequences of climate change. Just as an example, I'll talk about the mitigation side, which is reducing emissions. And one of the things that I think that is kind of fun and unique being in a consulting position is we talk to the city government. And then we also talk with the major foundation in the city. And then we also talk to the major businesses in the city. And so we're able to be close to what each of them want to do and want to achieve. And you're right. There is, I think it was Breno that asked, you're right. There are a ton of, investors and so on. There's a ton of barriers to collaboration. Often it's because they just don't know what the challenges of the other parties are. And so part of what we do is we'll convene them together to have conversations, and people, when you put them in the same room, can often figure it out, right? So that's one side of things. There's other more technical things that we'll do around how can we align incentives so that all of these different things that the different groups want to do are all pointing in the same direction, if that makes sense. So just to give an example of that, I'll try and think of an example. Like one of the things we'll do is we'll work with a bunch of people, investors who own a lot of buildings, and they're really finding it hard to get all of the people they need to upgrade those buildings so that they have lower emissions, or so that they're net zero. They don't emit any greenhouse gases. And the city's trying to create new training programs and increase employment. And so we'll bring them together and say, well, there's probably an opportunity to develop educational programs for people to upgrade buildings, right? And that way we can hit both of your objectives together, right? So there's a lot of examples like that. Generally, I just have like a fundamental belief that every single person and entity in any kind of social system has its own like really unique strengths. You know, the businesses are able to deploy capital. They're able to get stuff done super efficiently. The activists are able to push the boundaries on what's possible, to challenge, to demand more. The politicians are able to set the framework. You know, a local community member knows what works in the park next door to their house, right? And so I really think it's so much a matter of realizing the unique strengths and perspectives of every different person or entity in any type of system, and trying to get the most of each of them.
That's amazing. I would love to reinforce that to everyone here, because sometimes I feel we don't see our part as like the most important, because there's no such thing. You know, we all have important pieces of, as you were saying, everyone has a piece to make that all work, right? So I love what you're bringing in a very practical way, and I see that people has a lot of curiosity to see how it's really the collaboration and how do you call it success. So I'm reading here Ruth's question about the cross-disciplinary collaboration, and particularly she's saying enhancing resilience to disasters and promoting sustainability. So I think it's most of what you work now. So do you feel there's the collaboration sometimes, if there's none collaboration, you would call off a project? So how important everyone in the same page, being in the same page is, because I feel all of us here at LALA, we try to be a little bit of mediators, like everyone wants happiness and peace in the end. So if we don't find a way of working with different people all the time and coming to a middle ground, it's much difficult, right? So how do you feel yourself as a mediator in the middle of all that?
Totally. And like, I think Root, your question is great. You know, the cross-disciplinary piece is so critical. So when you asked, you know, kind of for an example of that, you know, enhancing resilience to disasters, you need the scientist who is able to model what's going to happen with 1.5 degrees in global warming and how that's going to translate in flood risk in your city, right? Then you need the engineer to think about how high is that flood going to be, and do we need defenses to protect our city from that flood? You need the community member to say, how can we make this not just a big wall around our city, but something that's beautiful, that's maybe nature-based, that creates a better living environment for all of us. You need the financiers to think about, how are we going to make this happen and afford it? You need the politicians. And so sustainability is the prime example of a challenge that requires everyone, right? It touches every aspect of our society. And so from a system change perspective, that's why I was interested in system change, because it is almost impossible to progress other than in little tiny areas here and there, impossible to progress in sustainability unless you think about all of those players. And I think one of the beautiful things I see, especially working in cities, is when that's done well, it has a whole bunch of wonderful side effects. So you bring all those people together to work on that flood wall, and then they become buds, you know, and they start to work. Hey, you know what? Can we use these same networks that we've formed working on this flood barrier to help address this affordable housing issue we have in town? You know, you can thread together people in a place in a way that you can then use those capabilities to do other things.
Amazing. And I want to transition a little bit to a question that I saw popping up here a few times. So Allison and also Mateo, I don't know exactly who it was because there's a lot here, but they asked how young were you when you started, or what's the age that you think we could start, because we're passionate about sustainability. So I imagine that you're seeing more and more passionate people coming in different roles to the projects that you're doing. So what would you say to this young folks that are now thinking about going to different roles in sustainability? Do you feel we can start right away?
Anytime. We need everyone, man. Yeah. We need everyone, right? This is too big a challenge to not have everyone on board. And Fernanda, you said that at the beginning, right? We need all 8 billion of us. And so there's no time too soon. What I would do is I would think about how can you, going back to that earlier point around everyone has their own asset, their own strength that they bring to this. What is yours? Right? What is yours personally? What is yours in the place you are? Is there a network you have? Are there students you have that you can mobilize? Is there something you really know about your neighborhood that you can activate? So that's one thing I would think of. And then the second thing I would think of is, how do I learn? And so for me, like I literally I think I started most contributing to sustainability, not like contributing in a big way, but the first thing I remember doing is when I was, I think 7 or 8 years old, my brother and I did a haunted house in our basement. We had a bunch of kids from the neighborhood come, we charged them 50 cents each, and we donated all the money to habitat preservation at the zoo. It was $30. Didn't make a big impact, but I'll tell you, it solidified something within me that has lasted, right? And so just by taking that action, you create a sense of internal power that is a seed that grows, right? So I would just think about what can you learn and like just really suck up, and then where is it that you currently have some type of asset, some type of capability that you can play your role in this effort.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The $30 make maybe not a lot of a difference, but the attitude that you influence so many people around it is what's worth, right? So yeah. I love that story. And just about this, so when you're starting, you might like try to find sources and people that you can listen to. So what would you recommend for people starting to be more acquainted in sustainability and how they could be participating more? Rebecca is asking if you could point out a few, even a documentary, or what inspired you that you think could be good to share with everyone.
Yeah, that is such a good question, and I feel embarrassed I'm not going to have a great answer, but there's a few things.
You can send us later, don't worry.
Yeah, I'll send you later. Maybe there's a few things that come to mind, and these may or may not appeal to you, but the first things that come to my mind, which I'll just share, are, first of all, the Planet Earth documentary by the BBC. It's just freaking beautiful. So that's fun. Yeah. Second, I think there's there's a beautiful book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which ties together kind of North American indigenous traditions and perspectives into the sustainability movement, and also just has a beautiful perspective on kind of family and how that all links together, and it's just beautiful descriptions. So those are more inspiring, I would say, than necessarily technical educations in sustainability. There's also a couple, like Project Drawdown has a good resource on, if you think about just the different things that need to happen to reduce emissions to be able to get us to where we need to get to. Project Drawdown is a more accessible, I think they have like a coffee table book and they have a website and so on, a bit more of an accessible way to start to understand it. So those are 3 off the top, and I can also think about some others and share after.
I love it. And I know that we're having more and more options to follow, at least here in Brazil, of organizations that are following, doing very good work in the Amazon, for example, and they're sharing a lot of their findings. So we can even create a collaborative library team. I know leaders are all into that. So when we find a good resource, we always share. So I would love that to start that with your 3 suggestions and a couple more. So count on that. We'll share with you too, so you know more about our own communities here in Latin America. And well, I have a few other questions that I'm also curious about on the chat. And I love that Luisa brought something related to the difficulty of us being inserted in the system and don't seeing it, how it changes, right? And you mentioned this a few times already, like how do we foresee that the system is about to change? How we influence it to change in a good way? And this is what we need in sustainability, right? That the systems that are right now solid and working in a evil way, that they change to something better. So I think Luisa was asking some advice on how she could be seeing herself as part of a system and that is changing, and how could we lead a change on a system. So I would welcome your thoughts on this whole systems changing topic, and how can we be protagonists.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, one thing that I find inspiring is if you study kind of system change, systems don't change and don't change and don't change and don't change, and then they really frickin' change. You know,
That's good to know.
Well, it's there's these inflection points in systems, right? And you see that in revolutions on a political scale, you see that in economic shifts, you see that in all kinds of different social dynamics. And so I think one aspect of it is just maintaining that hopefulness and commitment, even in the face of seeming intractability, like even when it's hard and things don't appear like they're changing. And there are wonderful stories to read about that, in all kinds of different contexts, right? So that's one. I love just kind of immersing myself, even in like cool revolutions that happen around the world in different times. One amazing example of it is the end of the slave trade, right? Which seemed intractable, seemed like a core, Fernanda, it was, one of those things, it was just like, as you said, it was just a totally fixed thing that just had to change for the, longest time. It didn't look like it was going to change. And then, obviously there's still major issues with that. And I don't want to say there's not, but there was a period where it dramatically changed. And so there's a bunch of examples like that just for inspiration. And then, yeah, again, I would say just like, figure out like where's your asset in that, like what kind of thing do you have that you can bring to this. Is it you just like the park near your house really well, and you've grown up there, and so all the nooks and crannies, and that when a storm comes and it rains, there's this one park down in the back left that floods more than the others, and it always causes this problem. Like, that is an adaptation opportunity, right? Or is it, there's anything like that. There's these different kinds of knowledge and different assets that I would just think about bringing to it, and then inspire yourself with the big picture, right? Like, take the small action, inspire yourself with the big picture.
I love that, because it gives the responsibility to all of us, to the person that knows the most about their own, as you said, where it always get flooded. So you have the responsibility, or you can be the person to tell the others, right? And they don't have to do a study about it, because you're there living it every day, right? So that's good advice, because sometimes we feel that this is too small, but it's not. We're creating change in this. It's being a leader, right? And pointing out where we could improve. So I love it, really. And I'm a little curious about your experience related to navigating corporations, right? So Sophia is asking about the theme of corporate sustainability. So this is a path that I think a lot of people could take. So the corporations, they have roles and entire teams dealing with sustainability today. But sometimes you find, as Sophia pointed, hidden resistance, right? So the system is like, oh no, they're changing me, let me resist, right? So do you have any tips on how we find and deal with that, so that our efforts get the most out of it. So I don't know if this would be something that you would relate to in past experiences, or that you have advice for all of us.
100% relate to it. 100% relate to it. And I remember like one of the I'll tell you one random experience as a way of bridging to this, but because I think it's important to think about this. One random experience I like, you know, when I was in university, I won some college or some like a paper competition thing and got to go to the Summit of the Americas, right? And there were all these leaders. This was in Quebec City. There were all these leaders of different countries in the Americas and this fancy hotel. And it was during the time when there was a huge amount of protests. And I remember being in the hotel, this fancy hotel, and looking out the window on this empty street. And there were lines and lines of riot police, right? The backs of people in their big helmets with their shields, and just lines and lines and cement barricades. And then there were the activists out front. And it's kind of an image that stays with me because I have a strong belief that both of those are important. The activists out front, super important. It shaped the conversation in the hotel room. It changed the pressure dynamics. Critical, 100% critical role. And there was a critical role for the people who were in the hotel, but that role was different. And so when you think about corporate sustainability, I think there's a little bit of a question is, are you outside or are you inside? Both are critical. There are different tactics for both players. So if you're inside, my view is that the most effective tactics are to think about, how do I align sustainability with the interests of this company? Ultimately, most companies are going to be profit seeking. So how do I be really innovative to think about how they can achieve that profit seeking objective through sustainability? Or how do they reduce some risk they're concerned about through sustainability? Or how do they address some regulatory requirement through sustainability? But I think you need to be savvy, if you're inside. There's definitely a room for idealism, but that idealism needs to translate into tactical intelligence, if you're in there. So to me, that's the approach I take, because I'm typically the one in that room, right? Now, I would take a very different and totally think it's a critical role when you're outside that room and you're taking a more activist role. Totally different sets of tactics that you employ. As I said, both are super critical, but I guess that's how I think about it. Tons of hidden resistance. And I just think about, I'm not going to change these folks' objectives. I'm going to help them achieve their objectives via sustainability.
Yeah. And everything that you're saying is inspiring, because we see that everyone has a part, the people inside and the people outside, right? And we were talking about cities before, and I'm sorry for the back and forth on the topics, but people are making great questions, and
let's do it.
I'm going. Sometimes we talk about one thing, so I love that they're asking a little bit more about the cities as contributors to the unbalance like that we have today, especially Breno is saying about the carbon emissions, that we know that it's because I don't think we can blame the cities, right? So I would love for you to unfold a little bit of this question that Breno asked. He's asking, what innovative approaches do you see for us to transform the urban centers into models of sustainability? I imagine there must be like tons of things we could do, but where do we start? What are the might be some research that just tell us here is the 80-20. So can you explain a little bit more to us about this role of the cities and the changes?
To me, the biggest one is urban form. And urban form basically means, what is the shape of the city? How dense is it? What is the nature of the transportation? Because it's really density, right? If you have denser spaces, you can have more public transportation. You can have more walkability, more biking. So it reduces transportation emissions dramatically. Density also reduces the emissions that come from buildings, which is 40% of global emissions, because you have, instead of a whole bunch of individual places, you have, more buildings where you have shared living or shared working within a different space. You're pouring less concrete because the roads are shorter. there's a lot of impact. So I would say the 80%, Fernanda, to your question, is urban form. One of the big things I'm terrified about is, as in many emerging parts of the world, if they urbanize in a way that is just massive suburbs forever that are all 2-car garages, we are screwed, right? Because we set ourselves down a 150-year journey that we can't back out of, right? So, and also one of the things that, I'm Canadian, but one of the things that, America has learned pretty strongly on this is those are harder places to protect from climate change. They often create worse social dynamics in many cases. So a huge piece is urban form. I think another really exciting piece is nature-based solutions. So the thing that you want to do is not just have a bunch of dense gray concrete. None of us, that's we want to create life in our cities and vitality and opportunities for people to interact with nature. And so, especially when it comes to climate risk, so the impacts of climate change, nature-based solutions are so exciting. Instead of a big flood wall, can it be a marsh that birds and wildlife will come to, that is cheaper to maintain, that also protects the city from flooding? Instead of a lot of thick walls to protect from extreme heat, can it be trees and green roofs that are cheaper and beautiful and invite wildlife into the city? So to me, those are two of many, as Brenna recognizes in the question, right? Brenna, I know you said this in the question, right? Like there's a ton of options, right? But those are two of the really ones that I'm excited about.
Thank you so much. And I can't believe we're getting to the final moments of the chat, because there are so many interesting questions, and we could go on lots more because people are really into asking your experience. So you might have to come back. But I picked one last question that I want to ask, because I think it's really important. And Marilia is asking us, in your experience, and you can tell from the Brodie person now, not representing anyone, do you feel that companies want to become more sustainable because they have the means, but they don't do what they say they would do? So I know it's hard to talk about companies as some kind of organization that has their own motives and stuff, but do you feel this is something that's happening, or greenwashing is real and we have to still be alert?
I would say, yeah, and all of this is definitely me as a person, not representing a firm, but I would say both, right? Companies are made of people, and just like everyone in this virtual room, the vast majority of people in companies care about their kids, care about the planet, want to have safe, vibrant, healthy places to live. And often, I see so often, there's this presumption that people at the top of companies are just these powerful people that can do whatever they want. There is no one under more pressure than the CEO of a public company. The number of people that are telling them what to do on a daily basis is extraordinary. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to navigate all of these conflicting pressures from governments and shareholders and their employees and their teammates and their board and the customers and they're trying to figure out how to navigate their company through those. So I think that's where it comes to the system change again, is we need to help it make it easier for their natural human desire for sustainability to come out. Now, the reason I said both is there also is definitely greenwashing. There's certainly a lot of greenwashing because they're trying to quickly satisfy that stakeholder issue through public relations instead of real meaningful change. But the way I think about it, and I'm not saying yes, there are some companies and some corporate leaders that don't care, right? And that's where the activists need to come in and all that kind of stuff. But I think in a lot of cases, people want to do the right thing, and everyone's struggling with their own challenges and their own place in that system. And so how do we change everything to make it easier for everyone to be more sustainable?
Yeah, I'm so happy that we closed in that note, because as we were saying throughout the whole chat here, we need all of us, right? So there's no way we will solve that if we're not everyone doing your small or big piece. So thank you so much for doing your piece today, inspiring all of us. I think this conversation was the best we could. I'm in love with all the questions that everyone brought.
Yeah,
so
amazing questions, folks. Those are really cool questions, really inspiring. Just even, I know we didn't get to all of them, but really inspiring to see them.
Yeah, and it's good to know that there is this curiosity and people wanting more, because we'll bring more and more on this topic to the community. But thank you so much for being here with us today. Have a great evening, and we'll follow up more. We'll continue
Thank
to
you
the
all.
event.
Have
Thank
a
you so
great rest
much,
of your event.
Brodie.
Have a great rest of your event. Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was nice. Gente, agora eu vou mudar para a nossa língua oficial da LALA, o portunhol. Espero que todos me entendam nesse momento. E vou falar um pouquinho português, espanhol, para que a gente continue. Let's move on. É difícil quando você estava falando inglês, mudar para portunhol, but I can do it. Então agora, everyone, I'm so happy to say that we have our next guests. Tenemos nuestras próximas speakers acá con nosotros, y estoy muy feliz de introduzir essa nova parte, que a gente vai falar this real activism that's happening com Andrea, com Amanda, e temos Maricelo e Ludmila como nossas entrevistadoras. A gente está muito feliz de trazer essa conversa para vocês agora. Então, por favor, vocês podem escolher aonde vocês vão. Já vai aparecer os botõezinhos dos breakouts. Amanda é uma ativista brasileira que tem um instituto, Perifa Sustentável. Ela vai contar um pouquinho para vocês. E a Andrea fundou uma empresa no Peru, Sem Basura, Sem Lixo, né? E ela vai contar para a gente dessa mix de empreendedora, ativista também. Então, eu estou muito animada para esses dois papos. E isso tudo vai estar gravado. Todo está sendo recorded. E assim podemos oír quantas vezes quisermos mais estas charlas, que com seguro van a ser muy ricas. Entonces, Andrea, Amanda, Ludmila y Maricelo, mucho gusto de tenervos acá, y gracias por tu tiempo y trazer tus insights. Y everyone, questions on the chat, preguntas, y seguimos para la segunda parte del evento.